Every single tiny home you've ever seen on YouTube looks like a shoebox, a rectangle, a box, maybe with a loft, maybe with some fancy barn doors. But at the end of the day, it's still just a box. And here's what nobody's telling you. That rectangle shape, it is actively working against you. It's robbing you of natural light, trapping heat, killing your privacy, and making your tiny home feel exactly as small as it actually is. But in 2026, something is changing. A design that's been used in luxury architecture for decades is finally making its way into the tiny home world. And it solves almost every problem the standard rectangle never could. It's called the H-shaped floor plan. And if you're planning to build, buy, or even just dream about a tiny home, you need to understand why this shape changes everything. Stay with me through this entire video, because at the end, I'm going to show you the one design feature of the H-shape that most people completely overlook, and it might be the most valuable square footage in any tiny home ever built. Before we get into it, if you're new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button right now, because we drop serious, research-backed tiny home content every single week. And if you already know someone who is building or thinking about tiny living, share this video with them. What we're about to cover could save them a lot of money and a lot of regret. Let's go. Let's be honest about something first. The standard rectangular tiny home, you know the one, became the default for very practical reasons. It's cheap to frame. It's easy to calculate materials for. It fits neatly on a trailer if you're going mobile. And it's what most builders know how to build. That's it. That's the whole reason almost every tiny home on the market looks exactly the same. But practical for the builder doesn't always mean practical for the person living in it. Here's what the rectangle actually does to you inside. First, light distribution is terrible. In a narrow rectangle, natural light hits the two short ends of the home. The middle, it's a cave. You're running artificial lighting all day just to see your own kitchen counter. Second, ventilation is a nightmare. Air enters one end and stalls before it ever reaches the other. Without a dedicated HVAC system running constantly, you're either roasting or freezing. Research from Science Direct confirms that overheating is one of the most common and serious problems in standard tiny house configurations, especially in warmer months. Third, privacy is basically non-existent. In a rectangle, your living room, kitchen, sleeping area, and bathroom are all strung along one single axis. Sound travels freely. Sightlines are open. If you're sharing the space with anyone, a partner, a kid, even a guest, there's nowhere to actually be alone. Fourth, the outdoor space is wasted. You put a tiny home in a beautiful setting and you get a deck on one end, maybe a little patio on the other. But you're never truly surrounded by your outdoor environment. You're always looking at it from behind glass, from one fixed direction. The rectangle treats your home like a hallway you happen to sleep in. And the crazy part, the solution has existed for centuries. Architects have been using it in Mediterranean villas, Japanese courtyard houses, and luxury custom homes for as long as humans have been building. And it scales beautifully down to tiny home dimensions. So what actually is an H-shaped floor plan? Picture the letter H. Two vertical wings connected by a central horizontal bar in the middle. That's it. That's the shape. In a home, those two vertical wings typically house the private spaces, bedrooms, bathrooms, a home office. And that central connecting bar, that becomes the heart of your home. The kitchen, the dining area, the main living space. What this creates, and this is where it gets exciting, is two open courtyard zones. One on each side of the central bar. Two partially enclosed outdoor spaces that are naturally sheltered by the wings of the house on either side. Think of it this way. Instead of a home that points in one direction, you have a home that embraces its outdoor environment from two sides simultaneously. Architectural design sources describe the H-shape as a layout where the central bar connects the two wings while providing access to shared living areas, and where the orientation of those wings is a critical design decision that determines how natural light, views, and privacy interact throughout the day. When scaled to tiny home proportions, typically 400 to 600 square feet of enclosed living space, you end up with a footprint that's wider than it is deep, which completely changes how the home feels and performs. Benefit 1. Natural light like you've never seen in a tiny home. The H-shape has exterior walls facing multiple directions: north, south, east, and west. because of those two open courtyard zones. That means you can place windows on all four sides of the home. In a rectangle, you're getting light from two directions at best. In an H shape, natural light floods in from every angle throughout the day. Morning light hits the east-facing courtyard. Afternoon light fills the west-facing side. And that central living bar, it's surrounded by glass on both flanks, making it one of the brightest interior spaces you can create in a small home. Design experts describe the H shape specifically for its ability to create a visual connection between indoor and outdoor spaces through large courtyard-facing windows, which enhances both the aesthetics and the functionality of the home. Benefit 2. Natural ventilation that actually works. Here's where things get really interesting from a building science perspective. The H shape is one of the best configurations for passive cross-ventilation. With wings on both sides and a central bar connecting them, you can position windows to take advantage of prevailing breezes from any direction. Air enters one courtyard zone, flows through the home, and exits through the other, naturally, without mechanical assistance. Research published in Building and Environment confirms that cross-ventilation-based designs are among the best passive cooling strategies, capable of reducing summer air conditioning energy use by up to 30%. In a tiny home where every utility dollar counts, that is a massive advantage. The best naturally ventilated homes, according to architects who specialize in passive design, combine cross-ventilation with strategic window placement and orient buildings to catch prevailing winds. The H shape does all three by default. Benefit 3. Privacy zones that feel like separate rooms. In an H-shaped tiny home, the two wings are acoustically separated from each other by the central living space. You can put a sleeping zone in one wing and a workspace or guest area in the other. Architectural descriptions of the H-shape note that the form allows you to divide bedrooms for better privacy, while the living room in the center unites the household during shared time. You get the intimate scale of tiny living without the constant closeness that makes most rectangular tiny homes feel claustrophobic after about 3 days. For couples, for remote workers who need a quiet zone, for anyone hosting guests, this separation of space within a compact footprint is genuinely game-changing. Benefit 4. The courtyard space changes everything. Let's talk about those courtyard zones, because this is where the H-shape delivers something no rectangle ever can. Each courtyard is naturally sheltered on 2 or 3 sides by the wings of your home. That means wind protection. That means privacy from neighbors. That means an outdoor space you can actually use year-round in most climates. Design sources describe the courtyard in an H shape as a personal outdoor space ideal for family gatherings, quiet retreats, outdoor kitchens, or even a fire pit, all within the natural privacy borders created by the wings of the house itself. For tiny home living, where indoor square footage is limited by definition, this usable, protected outdoor space is essentially free bonus square footage. You're not just building a tiny home, you're building a tiny home with its own private outdoor room. Benefit 5. Energy performance that traditional layouts can't match. In 2026, energy performance is no longer optional. The direct 25D solar tax credit for homeowners ended on December 31st, 2025 under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And with those rebates now gone, your home shape is your best energy strategy. You can no longer just buy your way out of a bad design with a tax break. That said, 2026 builders are increasingly turning to third-party solar leases and power purchase agreements, known as PPAs, which still carry incentives through 2027. So there is still a path to affordable solar, but it runs through smart design first, not government credits. The H shape delivers this through geometry. The extended perimeter compared to a rectangle means more opportunities for thermal mass placement, better passive solar gain in winter months, and the cross-ventilation we already discussed for summer cooling. Current energy-efficient home design guidelines emphasize thermal mass, using concrete, stone, or tile floors to absorb and store solar heat, combined with calculated overhangs to block summer sun while allowing winter light. The H shapes, courtyard-facing walls are perfect candidates for both. Tiny homeowners already consume over 54% less energy than average households according to 2026 market data. An H-shaped design pushes that number even further. Alright, let's talk about money. Because I know that's a question you're asking right now. The honest answer is that an H-shaped tiny home will cost more to build than a basic rectangle, but less than you might think, and for a lot more return. Here's the 2026 cost landscape for tiny homes. According to multiple verified 2026 sources, well-designed tiny homes between 250 and 450 square feet typically come in between $45,000 and $80,000 for a standard build. For an architecturally driven layout like the H-shape, however, you should budget $60,000 to $130,000. The H-shape has significantly more exterior wall surface area than a rectangle, which means more siding, more glazing, and more windows, and premium or architectural builds in 2026 are trending toward $300 to $400 per square foot for high-end finishes. For an H-shape specifically, you're looking at a few additional cost factors. The footprint is wider, so you'll need a larger slab or foundation. Typically, a concrete slab runs $6 to $14 per square foot. For an H-shaped footprint, budget an additional $5,000 to $12,000 over a simple rectangle foundation. Framing is slightly more complex because of the two wing and bar configuration. Add roughly 10 to 15% to your framing labor costs. However, and this is important, you recover a significant portion of that premium through energy savings on your HVAC system. Because the H-shape's passive ventilation is so effective, many builders are installing smaller, less expensive mechanical systems than they would in a comparable rectangle. You may be looking at $3,000 to $6,000 in HVAC savings alone. The tiny home market in 2026 is projected to reach $14 billion, up from $13.17 billion in 2025, growing at 6.4% annually. The designs commanding the highest resale values and rental income are not the basic rectangles. They're architecturally interesting, high-performance designs that offer more than a place to sleep. The H-shape is perfectly positioned in that premium tier. A realistic all-in budget for a thoughtfully designed H-shaped tiny home in 2026. $60,000 to $130,000 depending on size, finishes, and location. Compare that to the median U.S. home price of $405,300, and you start to understand why this design is gaining serious momentum. Now, I want to be honest with you about something. The H-shape is not for everyone, and I'd rather tell you that now than have you spend $80,000 and figure it out later. The H-shape is perfect for you if you are building on a fixed foundation with a reasonably sized lot. The H-shape needs more width than a typical rectangle, so it does not work well on an extremely narrow lot. You want at least 40 to 50 feet of usable width to make this layout sing. You are planning to live in your tiny home full-time, not just use it for occasional getaways. The privacy zoning and energy efficiency benefits compound over time. The longer you live there, the more they pay off. You are building for two people or more. The separation of wings is most valuable when there are multiple occupants who need their own space. You care about outdoor living as part of your daily routine. If you want a sheltered, private outdoor space that functions as an extension of your home rather than just a deck on the end, the H-shape delivers that in a way nothing else does. The H-shape is less ideal for you if you need a home on wheels. The width requirements and the complexity of the footprint make road transport very difficult. If mobility is your priority, a traditional rectangle THOW is still the more practical choice. But if you are planting roots, even tiny roots, this shape deserves serious consideration. If you are seriously considering an H-shaped tiny home, here are the design decisions that will make or break the project. Wing orientation is everything. Your wings should be positioned to capture your best views, harness prevailing breezes, and maximize solar gain on your primary living spaces. This is not a decision to rush. Spend time on your lot at different times of day. Understand where the sun rises and sets. Know which direction the wind typically comes from in your climate. The central bar is your social heart. Put your kitchen and dining area here. Make it open. Make it bright. This is where the whole layout converges. And it should feel like the warmest, most connected part of the home. Design the courtyards intentionally. One courtyard might be your morning coffee zone, east-facing, quiet, private. The other might be your evening entertainment space, west-facing, open to a view, connected to the kitchen. Don't just leave them as blank spaces. Plan them as rooms without roofs. Roofline decisions matter. Because the H-shape has a more complex footprint than a rectangle, your roofline options are broader. A simple flat or shed roof on each wing keeps costs controlled. A pitched roof that flows across the entire H adds architectural drama, but adds to your budget. Always verify zoning before you design. Tiny home zoning laws continue to evolve in 2026, and the H-shape, because it sits on a permanent foundation, typically falls under standard residential building codes rather than tiny home or accessory dwelling unit rules. Check your municipality's minimum square footage requirements and setback rules before you commit to a footprint. The good news is that many cities in 2026 are now adopting IRC Appendix Q and the newer Appendix AS, which finally formally recognizes tiny houses as permanent dwellings, making permitting significantly more straightforward than it was even 2 years ago. Alright, I promised you at the beginning of this video that I was going to show you the one feature of the H-shape that most people completely overlook. The thing that doesn't show up in the floor plan sketches. The thing no builder ever mentions in their sales pitch. Here it is. The H-shaped tiny home creates 2 separate microclimates within a single property. Think about what that means. One courtyard can be oriented for morning use. Facing east, sheltered from afternoon heat, designed for quiet and calm. The other courtyard faces west, warmer in the afternoon, ideal for social time, connected to your kitchen and dining flow. This isn't just an aesthetic observation. It has a real, measurable impact on how you actually live. You're not just building a tiny home. You are designing a tiny homestead with multiple distinct environments. A private zone, a social zone, an indoor heart, and 2 outdoor rooms. All within a footprint that might be 500 square feet of enclosed space. In a world where the average tiny home is 225 square feet, 9 times smaller than the average American house, the H-shaped design effectively multiplies your usable environment without adding a single dollar of enclosed square footage. That is the secret, not just the shape, not just the light or the ventilation or the privacy. It's the fact that when you build in an H, you stop thinking in 2 dimensions and start designing a life. And that's the difference between a house and a home. The tiny house movement in 2026 is growing fast. The market is projected to hit $14 billion this year. More people than ever are choosing to downsize, and 73% of Americans now say they would consider tiny living. But the shape of tiny living is changing too. The rectangle had its moment. It made sense when tiny homes were a niche experiment, when builders were playing it safe, when nobody was sure if this lifestyle would stick. But tiny living has graduated. It's no longer just about fitting life into a small box. It's about designing a small space that lives large, that breathes, that gives you privacy, that connects you to the outdoors, that performs beautifully in all seasons. The H-shape does all of that, and I genuinely believe we're going to look back at 2026 as the year it went mainstream. If you want to explore this further, I'll link some H-shaped floor plan resources in the description below. Drop a comment and tell me, would you build an H-shaped tiny home? What's your biggest concern? I read every single comment, and I'll respond to as many as I can. And if this video gave you something to think about, please share it. Send it to someone who is building. Post it to a tiny home group. It genuinely helps this channel grow, so we can keep making content like this for you. I'll see you in the next one.